Yeah. When you're ready.
At SHOT Show 2020, the biggest news in the low-power variable optic world was the new Vortex Razor 1-10. It was the first time a major manufacturer jumped out with the 1-10, and the hype has stayed pretty high, even with the whole world turning into a dumpster fire shortly after SHOT Show. The concept of a 1-10 power scope is really amazing when you think about it. For those that don't know, a low-power variable optic is an optic that will work on one power, virtually just like a red dot, giving you quick target acquisition and transitions, while having the ability to magnify and giving you potential ability to shoot farther or get more precision accuracy at shorter ranges. This model allows you to go all the way to 10 power magnification, which is pretty significant. Even more significant, Vortex does all this and keeps it about the same size as their 1-6 power Razor. Like I said, this is a 1-10 power optic. It has a 34mm main tube, both turrets are capped, and have 1/10 mil adjustments. The Razor Gen 3 is 10.1 inches long and will tip the scales at 21.5 ounces. Yeah, it's a little heavy, but that's okay, big girls need loving too. In all seriousness, the Razor may be a little heavier than some scopes, but the toughness of these scopes is legendary, and the fact that they added all this magnification while keeping the same length and weight as their 6 power is truly amazing. The clicks on the turrets are audible and tactile, and the illumination dial is pretty nice. You pull out to make your brightness selection, and then you can push it in to lock in your setting. Between each brightness level setting there are off positions. This is cool because you can keep the scope dial right next to the setting you desire, allowing you to quickly turn on and off the illumination right at the setting that you like. The Razor Gen 3's reticle is definitely daytime bright. It works great essentially as a red dot on the lower power magnifications, and I would say that the 1 power is really close to a genuine 1 power. At the higher magnifications, it has a Christmas tree drop gradient, allowing you to range longer shots quickly without dialing. Another small touch that I really like is the center of the reticle is slightly transparent, allowing you to not lose targets in the reticle. This is a great feature, and I hope other companies mimic this, because it seems like I'm always shooting something farther than I should, so the target is small and I tend to lose it in the reticle. One other thing I'd like to add is if you've used an older Razor where the magnification adjustment was super tough and you basically had to hold the rifle down with one hand to make the adjustment, that is completely gone. The Gen 3 adjusts very nicely and smoothly. I've never really tried to see just how far I could shoot a 10 power scope. Normally if I'm going to try to shoot say 1,000 yards, I'll use something more powerful around 25 power. But since we're reviewing a 10 power, I thought it might be neat to see just how far we could take it out. For this little test, I strapped the Vortex Razor 1-10 to my Savage Elite Precision in 6mm Creedmoor. That way I knew I would have plenty of gun. Kind of odd seeing a low power variable optic on a long range rifle, but it's for science. And let's face it, I've done way dumber stuff than this.
Impact.
Actually, my first attempt at 1,000 yards was far easier than I thought it would be. The Vortex Razor paired with the Savage made this particular shot a breeze. While I was reviewing this scope, I did get the opportunity to shoot a little farther than 1,000 yards, and even out to 1,200 yards, and I was still getting shots on target. I will say when I stepped out to 1,300 yards, that's when I could no longer make the bullet slap the steel. Now that's me with my eyes, and I'm sure there are people out there that could go even farther. And to be honest, I never thought I could use a 10 power scope at these distances. Just goes to show you, you never know till you try. Now, one thing that did become very noticeable when shooting at these distances, there is no parallax adjustment on the Gen 3. Now, that's not unusual for an LPVO, but this more powerful optic, it may be something Vortex may want to consider in a future revision. Vortex says the parallax is set to 150 yards and the scope was more than able to get the job done. But again, I think it's something to consider as this type of scope gets pushed out even farther. What do you guys think? Do you need a parallax adjustment on something like this? There is one thing I would be doing you a disservice if I didn't mention. The only sacrifice on this truly amazing LPVO is the eye box is kinda small vertically. For those that don't know, the eye box is the area behind the scope in which you can actually see through the scope. A forgiving eye box allows you to be in almost any position behind the scope and effectively use it. However, a small eye box means that you will have to make sure that your eye is perfectly lined up directly behind the scope or you won't see a thing. Now, most people will have their rifles adjusted with the proper cheek height. It was probably more prominent for me because we were jumping it from gun to gun and there weren't always setups perfectly for this scope. For instance, on this JTAC Industries Elf Owl, the scope was set up a little high for the cheek riser, and when your eye wasn't perfectly lined up, we all experienced some scope shadow. I will say that it was only on a setup like this, and we never experienced it when the scope was on an AR type rifle or anything else you could get the proper height cheek weld. Most users will have one rifle dialed in with this scope and you shouldn't have any issues. But like I said, I just feel like I should make a potential buyer aware. In the grand scheme of things, that's a very small issue with everything else Vortex was able to accomplish with this package. All things considered, this is one of the most impressive scopes I've ever shot. What other scope can be right at home and effective on an AR-15 engaging targets quickly at 25 yards or on a long-range rifle shooting out past 1,000 yards with no to very few compromises whatsoever? That also brings up the question, what exactly do you do with this scope? Well, pretty much whatever you want. I personally think it would excel most on something like an AR-10 or better yet, a POF Rogue or Revolution. Because that would give you something that is very effective at shorter ranges while being able to reach out far enough to really take advantage of the 10 power magnification. I think it would also make for a great hunting scope on an ultra compact package like the Q-Fix. Of course, it will also be great on a typical AR-15, and I'm sure that's how most people will use it. If you lived out in the country a little bit, on some land, a scope like this would allow you to quickly transition from close quarters to a longer range shot very quickly if needed. This is an awesome scope and there are so many uses for it because it is so versatile. While it may not be perfect, it is extremely good and very well executed. I actually thought there would be many more compromises in a scope with this power magnification. Vortex has done a phenomenal job with this scope and it does live up to the massive hype that it gets. This will change the industry and it will be interesting to see how other large scope manufacturers try to mimic the Vortex Razor Gen III, because Vortex has made some very large shoes to fill.